of August 2019 now. It's Emancipation Day, celebrated in some places today and in others on the first Monday of the month, which is next Monday. I'm Jerry George. It's time for this edition of MEK We Chat, where we join together to give you a look-see across the region, across the world, the things that we think are important for you. The suspect numbers are down tonight, but trust me, we're going to have a rollicking show. So rest assured upon that. George is always at the control. Producer Beth Sinclair is there in Grenada, and I'm passing the controls to her now.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I almost thought suspect in chief was gonna say 1838 there, you know. He couldn't find me here. Oh,
I couldn't, yes, so that would be fine.
I tell you. So I think it's good for us to be here. Still, the happiest place on radio, even though we are missing a few suspects. I know that last week, Catherine was suffering from the heat over there in the UK. I don't know what her situation is this week. I haven't heard from her. I know that Margaret has sent her regrets. She may or may not be able to join us. We're expecting the other usual suspects to show up. I guess they will at some point. But we're here, and we are set to get off to what we should say, an emancipated start. Because that's what we're going to focus on tonight, emancipation, what it means, and where are we as a people, all this talk of emancipation. So that's the big topic for tonight. And we have some other things we may touch on. I know George has done it already for the week, but we here in MEK WE CHAT, we want to offer our condolences to the entire nation of Grenada, to the family, to the friends, to the relatives of Dr. Winston Thomas, who passed away earlier this week. He was someone, a real unsuspecting person, but a very powerful person, a doctor in the town of St. George who was really, really loved by all. One of the few doctors who never had a private practice. He worked at the hospital, offered his services there. He would never turn away anyone. Dr. Winston Thomas was everybody's doctor. He was a social activist and advocate for any cause that he believed in. And he is going to be missed. He has made his mark on this nation, Grenada, and he will certainly be missed. And this is where I usually advocate for the writing of our history, so that 10 years, 20 years down the road, nobody has to ask who was Dr. Thomas. His record will be written and his stories will be told as they should be. So our condolences there to family, friends, relatives of Dr. Thomas. As we look at what we are going to talk about tonight, we see the Prime Minister of Grenada again, news conference. We're heavily into Grenada this week, We've been busy, and we have a little excerpt out of the Parliament of Dominica sent around that link to the suspect sometime today. I hope you all have a little time to look at it. It wasn't a very long clip from the Parliament of Dominica. And we will look at that as well. And I think I want to touch a little bit on that demonstration that the main opposition party in Grenada organized. Right, George?
Yes. Unfortunately,
George, did you go down and take pictures?
no, because I have been sweating here for the last 3 days because of an issue with my air conditioning. I've had my air conditioning people in here 4 times in 3 days, and I'm sitting here, I'm still mopping. I'm not sure that they have done what I had hoped they would do, so I had to be here for them this morning. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make it.
Okay, I was not down there myself, so I will be speaking from what was, passed around in social media and what I saw on newscasts. But demonstrate they did. And we are down another suspect that is quick. Here he is, he's back. But George, today, the 1st of August, we call it Emancipation Day. And over the years, we have looked at emancipation as being set free from the chains, the shackles, the physical chains
Really?
of slavery. Yeah, that's well, certainly that is how I grew up learning of emancipation. It is being set free from the shackles of slavery.
All right, if you say so.
Well, yeah, but this is MEK WE CHAT, so we will certainly share what we have learned about emancipation and what it means.
Well, as you mentioned, it's supposed to be the abolishment of slavery, or being set free from colonialism. But I'll tell you, Bev, I have my serious doubts as to just how free we are. It seems to be just a sort of buzzword, free.
And that is why I emphasize the physical shackles, the chains. We talk about the chains. Even in the referendum when was the last referendum? Was
What,
it 2017?
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Wow, time flies.
Yep.
We heard so much about breaking the shackles.
Of
But it
colonialism.
was always in reference to the physical shackles, the chains that would physically bind. That is what we have been taught. That is certainly what I have been taught about emancipation in my years in school. Yes, and here comes Atu. Welcome, Atu. Just in time, we're going to talk about emancipation and what it means. What we have been taught that it means, it really means. So for us, emancipation is supposed to be that physical freedom where the chains could no longer bind us after long, hard struggle, because it did not come easy. After long, hard struggle, the slaves in the Caribbean were set free. And it's interesting that one of the things you do not hear regularly is that although we were all British colonists by that time, or mostly British colonists, slavery was illegal in the motherland, although the motherland allowed it in all her territories except for two. I think it's only Sri Lanka and some other one. But anyway, it was illegal in the motherland, bear that in mind. But in all of her territories, slavery was allowed. So people in the UK, in England, certainly could not own slaves, not participate in the slave trade. But it was quite okay for it to happen down here in the Caribbean and other British-owned colonies at the time. So when emancipation came, gradually, I think we Caribbean were the last to actually have that proclamation come into effect in 1838, when finally the slave trade was abolished and no one could legally buy and sell people anymore. That was the emancipation then.
Bev, a little while ago you referred to the last referendum here and all the talk about shedding the bonds of colonialism. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Well, Bev, I like to be fair, and in all fairness, ever since I have seen at least one bond of colonialism being shed, and that is the wearing of this damn wig these guys wear in Parliament. I'm talking about the Speaker and the President of the Senate. Notwithstanding that, every Monday morning, we take a hat, we jump on a plane, and we go around the country, we go around the world saying, "Gimme, gimme, 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 gimme." You know the hypocrisy of it all. That has stuck with me. But anyhow,
Just yesterday, George, I saw a picture out of Grenada, and the Speaker of the House is in wig, and I was going like, "What?" Especially now it's hot, so I just have to go change clothes.
yesterday,
They
Just I
like
saw
it.
a picture yesterday. Just
They like.
yesterday.
They like it.
Yeah,
Those who wear the wig want to wear the wig. But I know that in Jamaica for sure they stopped wearing that wig in the parliament a long
oh
time.
yeah, oh yeah.
so
Long time.
in other words, it's like a status thing. Actually, I thought, it's just because it's so damn hot. It was so hot down at the Trade Center. I thought that's the reason why they wanted to really get rid of that stuff. But Jerry, what was this function you saw the wig at?
No, it's a picture of the Speaker of the House in St. Kitts. I'm sure it's
Sorry. Okay, yeah, okay.
St. Kitts. But
Right.
now you speak on emancipation. I read an article this morning. I thought, like, it's not all of it to share, but it's called the Emancipation Manifesto. And it's a write out of Trinidad and Tobago. And I think he sets it in a direction that perhaps we need to look at, as he highlights the political slavery into which we have now fallen. Just a couple of the things he said. We live in an ethnic based political hierarchy. When our party is in power, many of its adherents expect to be given something. All right? They go to the government asking for or expecting something. We want this or that to be taken care of. We have exchanged, in other words, massa for post colonial massa. Let me stop there and ask folks what they think about just that opening salvo.
That is why I was very careful in talking about emancipation as we have been taught, which is the breaking of the physical bonds of slavery. So I'm actually glad for the direction you are heading in, because the question which naturally follows that, are we now free since we have attained that kind of emancipation? Has the breaking of the physical chains really set us free? And that short piece which you have read there has squarely answered the question, because the short answer is no.
Let me read another piece now. He says, as long as we expect something personally from the government and we go to it begging for help, then we become slaves to our government and we make it our master. This means that large cohorts of our people are slaves, and the government adopts a massa mentality. And this guy got it so right, it isn't funny. And it's amazing to see how today people have subscribed, signed up, however you want to put it, to become slaves of political parties and personalities. You know? And these are some of the same people who will want to quote people like Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, and you say to yourself, could people be this really, really this gullible? Or is it that people just feel a sense that there's nothing more for them to fight for?
Jerry, there's a question here from somebody named Wayne Francis. Question comes to me, but I don't have an answer. But since you're talking about slavery, you may. He says, Mr. Grant, just a question. Is slavery really relevant in a modern society? Just asking. Thanks.
If it's relevant,
Yeah.
I don't know what the person means by
I
that.
know what the person means by relevance. But if you ask me if it's happening in a modern society, I will tell you yes, it is. And this writer just wrote to that effect.
But it's also relevant. Good night, my friends.
Hi, Artie.
Night, Tati.
simply because it is part of our history.
Yes,
That makes
that's
it
right.
relevant.
That's
But
irrelevant, right?
there's a segment of our population that wants to deny that part of our history, that doesn't like to talk about it, that says that they're not African or anything African, and try to deny that the slavery experience did and continues to shape and reshape and misshape our societies. And there's that element, in the society that doesn't like to talk about it. They didn't like the look of being Afro. They didn't like people wearing African clothing and so forth. And that element in the society is still very much there. And it is they who, notwithstanding their world travel experience and education and all of that kind of thing, who end up re-establishing the slave-master relationship in the society, because they make sure they are part of the slave-master level, not the slave level. But I ask this question: which comes first, the slave or the slave master?
Good question.
Does the slave create the slave master, or does the slave master create the slave?
Good question.
And it's something we need to think about.
Yeah.
Who
And
makes
that is,
our governments? Who places our governments in charge of us as chattel?
We do.
Who goes to the minister? Who asks the minister? Who refuses to read the constitution that makes the minister a servant of the people and instead chooses to treat the minister as a master? Who does that?
We do.
Who do you
Exactly.
okay. I think I like, there are several things which come to mind with that statement. Who makes the master? Is it the slave who makes the master, or the master which makes the slave? And we can put that in pockets in the workplace. You have some people in the workplace who do nothing except the boss is around. They need somebody over them with a big whip, a big stick. They need a massa to get them to work. And it's the same thing in the political arena. The slaves, those with mind of the slave, look for a massa. They look for somebody to enslave them and put them in a little cottage and say, you live there. And while you're living there, these are your duties. This is what you're gonna do. Serve me so that you can get your daily bread. And that is what happens in our society. So people allow themselves to be slaves to these systems.
Emancipation has to remove who? Has to change who?
And that is why we are in an era where it is the mind of the individual that needs to be emancipated. Back in 1838, there could have been laws passed. There could have been mass movements to free slaves. Now, in this era of slavery, you cannot pass a law to tell a person to use his brain, unfortunately, because that is what mental slavery comes down to, when a person stops thinking and allow the brain to be used by somebody else. I think recently had this calypso called brain. You stop using your own brain and you borrow somebody else's brain, so that you just go in the direction where you are being led without any thought of your own. Now, you can't pass a law to stop that, unfortunately. So emancipation from mental slavery is something each person has to do.
Because our post-colonial experience, our post-independence experience shows us a couple of things about laws and passage of laws. You can pass all the laws you want, but if there's no will or no institutional capacity to enforce the law is just words in a book.
Yes, but look at what happened this week in Grenada. The Prime Minister of the country, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, sat down in a news conference and told the nation that the Commissioner of Police cannot tell him what to do.
Well,
He said that.
he's basically saying this thing we call the Constitution, I'm not interested in that. I'm not living.
Exactly.
No kidding.
He's
No
not talking
kidding.
about the Commissioner of Police. He's talking about the Constitution.
No kidding. And by the way,
Yes,
Beverly,
because
John was agreeing with you a little while ago, and he is also responding to Ati.
George, we're not hearing you clearly
Hello, I'm here.
very low.
and kind of muffled.
How about now? Any better?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Arthi, John and Carrick was responding to you. He says, you can't have one without the other. Which came first? Was your question the master or the slave? He says you can't have one without the other.
Meaning slave and slave master?
Yeah.
Well, what Ati was asking is who creates which? Does the slave create the master because it's like the chicken and egg, or the master create the slave? And it's it's dialectic that we should really think about.
There's this one Caribbean writer, an astounding individual, as we have had many astounding individuals that we have relegated to the dump heap. This one is Walter Rodney. Walter Rodney wrote lots of stuff, but there are two books that Walter wrote. How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and the other one is Grounding with My Brothers. If you take those two books and you juxtapose them around the issue of slavery and emancipation and independence, they actually encircle all the issues. Because in the first book, he defines the problematic of colonization and slavery and colonial society, etc., etc. And in the second book, he says, you want to get out of this? Ground with your brothers. Do we do any of that? Have we even understood what our writers have been trying to say to us over these decades? Why was Walter such an enigma to the leadership in Guyana and to the leadership in the Caribbean generally? It was because he had put his intellectual force to work and had found the right buttons, as have others in their own way and their own time. But if we as a people continue to ignore what our own thinkers are telling us, there is no way that the word emancipation will be anything more than a word to us. It will be nothing else. And that is why I have a real problem with all those reparations advocates. It's because Walter, they are singularly focused on a specific component, which may be or may not be a tool for emancipation reparations, but they are not focused, they're not interested in carrying the brothers and sisters of the region along. Because this is their thing. And the people won't have it. And the people won't have it.
When we look back at history and looking back at it from practical knowledge, what we know now, we know that when our foreparents were set free, when the British left and said, we gone, you're all on your own, they did not know anything about managing a country. they were not schooled in being economists and international trade. They had been the slaves who worked on the plantation, who actually made these things happen, but they didn't know how it happened. So once they were free, the plantations became useless and worthless because they didn't know how to use them. And during that period, Patty, they would not have been able to set up trading relationships with the same Europe and the same UK and the same England that just set them free. There is no way they would have come back to say, okay, we still need the sugar. So let us sign this contract with you to provide us with sugar so that you can earn money to build your economy.
You know, we need to give our ancestors a little more credit. Why would a plantation slave want to restore a plantation, which was the main tool of his enslavement? Would it be a smart decision? Would it be a wise decision? In whose book? In whose book? It would production of sugar, or we can put it in a real life, has the production of sugar, bananas, limes, and other cocoa and other products for export. What has been the net impact, effect of that on our societies? What really was missing? Who had the knowledge of running production systems that did not destroy the natural systems so that it could go on from generation to generation? Who had demonstrated that for thousands of years they could extract water, minerals, plant food, etc., from a land, and that land would still be fertile and productive? Our ancestors did that. First peoples did that. When the plantation system came in, it came in with their concerns about efficiency and output and maximization of product and so forth, at the expense of the physical space that they were doing. That's why the sugar lands in Jamaica became the least fertile. The sugar lands in Barbados and Guyana became the least fertile. It's because they were mined. They were never, nobody invested in the sugar lands in terms of the quality of fertility, their water conditions, etc. Nobody did that because the plantation structure was not designed to reinvest in the plant, and the plant was the plantation. Development would be about reinvesting. So ask ourselves, when you go to these peasant farms throughout the world, the tiny little peasant farms, 0.5 hectare, 3 acres, they look disorganized and unproductive. But guess what? Somebody learned how to use that 3-acre plot of land to feed a family, to raise animals, to live a relatively healthy life, to build a home, and eventually, when the opportunity presented itself, to send children to school from that same 3 acres. But have we ever studied that economics? Where are the textbooks in our schools and universities that speak to peasant farm economics, sustainable economics? They don't exist.
And that is the kind of transition that I was pointing to, Aki, when I say tonight you go to bed a slave, tomorrow you wake up a free man. And the master is gone, the plantation is there. And I fully understand and appreciate that our foreparents back then would not have wanted to continue with a plantation. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will look at this transition from being a slave to being free and how it could have impacted on our foreparents and the lessons that were learned and maybe some of the consequences that we are facing now.
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply departments and Food Fair supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fair supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan. Mr. Watts, wait. Why are you removing my sign?
Sorry, Larry, but you can't put the sign on an electricity pole. That is an accident waiting to happen.
Mr. Watts, man, I just finished this new house. I need to put up a sign so that people would know that the apartment is for rent. Why can't I put my sign on the pole?
Larry, you should know better. Think about it. Nails, staples, glue, and signs make it difficult for linesmen to quickly and safely climb poles, and it can delay their response time when there is an emergency. These objects can prevent linesmen responding as quickly as they should in an emergency.
You know, I've never thought about those things. But you're absolutely right.
On top of that, Larry, your sign was covering the pole identification number. What if someone needed to report a fault? The pole number tells Grenlec exactly where the problem is and allows them to respond faster.
Whoa, I really didn't consider all these things, you know. Come, let me help you take this down.
Remember, be safe, be smart. No more signs, banners, or posters on electricity poles.
GRENADAB, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Studying too hard about back-to-school expenses? Co-op Bank is making back to school as easy as 1, 2, 3. Enjoy competitive interest rates, affordable monthly payments, speedy decisions on applications. Come in and apply today.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with our distinguished guests, Beverley Sinclair, and bottom left, bottom right, Mr. Atherton Martin and Dominica, showing us his wedding ring, and Mr. Jerry George, top left, and yours truly. Folks?
Just noted a message coming from Catherine. She said that she has problems with her computer and something to do with Skype. I didn't get a chance to read it, but at least she just sent through a message a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Ati, you had the flow where we took the break, and we're giving it completely back to you for that story.
Well, yeah, because storytelling can be very helpful.
It is helpful
if we listen. Because we need to know that there are people like ourselves, in this case, Caribbean people, who know how to do certain things, who have done certain things. And we were talking about the transition from the plantation to the post-plantation. And Michael Manley was a visionary in Jamaica. And in the 1970s, the mid-70s, he brought a number of scientists, agricultural scientists from the region to Jamaica. And our mission was very simple. Michael wanted to reduce the dependence of Jamaica on sugar. But he understood the position that sugar occupied in the society. It was a hot political and economic potato. So he needed hard information. So we were put on two of the estates, the biggest sugar estates, one in Frome and one in Monymusk. Frome was way out on the west side of the island, and Monymusk was towards the south. And we lived there for about, in and out for about a year. And what we did was, we did an evaluation of the soils. We found untouched soils, so we created a base. So we knew how depleted sugar had made the lands, because we had original Jamaica lands, which are highly fertile, well drained, good organic mass, microbial life, everything. Anything would grow there. But it was on the hills. All the flat sugar land was put in sugar and kept in sugar for literally hundreds of years. And it was depleted. The yields were getting lower and lower, so sugar was not a good, viable, profitable crop for Jamaica. So we were given a grocery list of products that they wanted grown. Sweet potatoes, pumpkins, yams, dasheen, a range of vegetables, etc., etc. And our job was to find suitable areas on those estates, set up experiments, plots with these items, and produce them. And to record everything we did, so that in fact the data could be used to inform decisions about what kinds of lands. Because these islands have a lot of data on their soils and their lands, so it was easy to use the soil maps to classify the locations we were using. We discovered that whereas in some locations they were getting, let's say, only 7 tons of sugar, 7 tons of sugar, of cane per acre from the land, we were getting 15, 20, 30 tons of assorted vegetables from the same acre at less than 20% of the cost, because we were composting. We were using the same compost from the cane fields to create fertilizer, organic fertilizer, for the vegetables that we were growing. And the same sugar workers, they became different creatures, because that appears to be what they knew how to do. So there was no problem finding gardeners and people like that and so forth. But when production started coming on, and the yields and harvest time, the idea was going to be, they had made arrangements to get it into various supermarkets in Kingston and Montego Bay, to key hotels and so forth, to test market the product without identifying where they had come from. People who got the first round of stuff went crazy. They wanted to know where they could get more, etc., etc. But by that time, the people who ran the sugar factories, the sugar industry authority, who among these people, you know? Their jobs, their positions, their status in the society, they perceived was all going to be threatened because they knew nothing about vegetables, knew nothing about ground provisions, and so forth. So they actually lobbied and literally threatened the Manley administration with literal administrative revolt if he went ahead and translated this experience, these pilots, to the other estates, or expanded the acreage, because the idea was to expand the acreage. These were farms of thousands of acres. Frome was a huge farm, one of the largest. Yeah. And the idea was that Jamaica could have become self-sufficient in a range of agricultural products. And that was anathema to another interest section in Jamaica, the importers and the retailers. And so politically, and that's at that same time, there was an election coming up in Jamaica. So politically, Michael had to make a decision. It was either vegetables or victory. And, you know, he made the decision. So, you know, but what this tells us And this is not the only country that I'm aware of that has done that kind of work, to show that plantation lands, plantation labor, plantation technology in the workers, in the working group, in this area, and certainly domestic need is there to drive the transition from, whether it be, in this case it was a sugar, but the same could be said of banana plantations and other plantations that could be diversified to help meet the needs of the local. And before you know it, you would have so much production coming through. You would have material for processing, you would have material for export, you would have created many, many, many more jobs outside of those farms. But that kind of sustainable economics, that kind of turning the plantation into a new, modern, post-slavery, post-emancipation factory, even today faces resistance from persons who have vested interests, hotels that prefer to order their stuff on the phone or by computer and have it arrive in a 40-foot container rather than buy from the farmers next door. An industry that has no allegiance to the local population, even agro-processing industries that import raw material from outside of the region to process and market it under our name. So we know what to do. We just have to convince more and more people that we do.
And you have said a ton. First of all, that experience that you have just shared, this is not something I have ever heard before.
Exactly.
So where is it documented? Where is it written?
Well, two things. You will well understand why it had to be a low-profile operation. You would well understand, right? Because Michael and his people knew about the resistance that something like that. Actually, they expected more resistance from the sugar workers, but that is where the most support was. The documents on some of that would have to be at Frome Estate, would have to be at Money Musk Estate. It would have to be somewhere in the ministry, whoever was, because we documented everything.
And this is how we do ourselves, we, meaning Caribbean people, do ourselves the greatest disservice because of politics, economics.
Politics.
Yeah, because of politics, we forget economics. And somehow, those who choose to be slaves expect that politicians will be able to support them one way or the other, despite the fact that the ones who seek support are the ones who will never work or don't want to work. They do not contribute to productivity in any way, but they walk around with a big long bag to collect from the politicians who turn to corruption and thieving to get money to support these people.
Good. There was one important part of the story I left out, and I'll just mention it because that itself is a whole book. And
Steel bottom?
Then I'll come into that. Obviously, because the intent was to create a new production structure, we had to ask ourselves, what kind of mechanism? The plantation had its corporate mechanism. The peasant farm had its family structure. So we created the sugar worker cooperatives of Jamaica. And that I know you could probably find in the cooperative division of the Ministry of Agriculture. The sugar worker cooperative, which will be organizing the sugar workers to be owners of those new plantations. The still bottom story is this. I mean, you're living and working very close quarters with people. So you get invited to weddings, to funerals, to christenings, to all kinds of things. And I mean, that is real. I mean, that ain't no fancy party. So you go there, and I'll never forget this one. It was a christening. I went, and it was dark. The place was dark. And the guy said, well, we have a drink for you, man. Hold up. And I asked, what is it? Guy, steel bottom. No, I almost didn't understand what he said, but I know these people are not going to do me any harm. So I took it. It was about an inch of overproof rum in the bottom of the glass. And the glass then is filled with warm red stripe beer.
Yeah.
And you drink it like a shot. After that one, I was out like a light.
Steel bottom indeed.
I woke up in my bed because they had carried me over because I mean, and they hold the glass.
Oh, my.
You know, you can't get away. Somebody hold your head and somebody hold the glass.
Oh my goodness.
That is the steel bottle.
Jamaica is the only place where I know that people drink hot beers. You go to cricket and hot beers selling more
Yeah, man. Yeah,
than cool beers.
That's the thing, man.
Incredible.
But when you start to drink it, you think it's just a beer. So you goggling, and the steel bottom waiting for you.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was part of the fun of the plantation.
Yeah, man. I will never ever forget those people. Never, ever, never.
And that period you're referring to, Afi, would have been just over 100 years after the emancipation of slaves.
Just over 100, yeah.
Right. So
30, yeah.
So when you look back at 100 years, it's not really such a long time. You know, that's why the Chinese say 250 years is not long enough to tell if the social revolution has worked.
No.
Because when you look back on 100 years, you say, okay, so that means there were people alive then whose great-grandparents or maybe even grandparents would have been slaves.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know.
Some people in their 90s plus going at that time who remember this slave business.
Can you imagine? Wow. And at that time, how different it would have been, how different our knowledge base would have been if we had captured their stories and documented it so that we could have a picture of slavery from our side, what the slave masters have told us over the years, you know, that Columbus come discover and all of that nonsense.
But Beverly, it's not that these people didn't want to tell us, you know. They used to tell us. That is what some of the ring games, the Moonlight stories was about.
Yes, and the music.
But we eventually got ashamed of some of those stories. And we made our stories in the image of whom?
Yeah.
The masters.
The imitation of the master. Yeah.
That's it. But they used to, because my father used to tell a story about this person in the village who was a slave. And who could tell, I mean, when he was a little boy, who could tell you actual things that happened? Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, we never documented these
That's
things.
it.
And so we have lost them. All of these stories under the moonlight and under the stars that our foreparents used to tell. And no.
You go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just feel so sad now when I think of it, of all our history that has been lost simply because we didn't recognize the importance of it. And you know, I mentioned at the top of this program when I put condolences on the passing of Dr. Thomas, that his story needs to be documented. You know? And we have so many of our older folks who are passing on, some not even so old, but, you know, for whatever reason, we have no control over life and death. They pass on. They have done great work. They have contributed.
But I know of one major initiative effort by the late Rex Nettleford to do just that, Bev. Um, he's somebody I also did some other kind of work with in Jamaica. But he had got funding from UNESCO to do the Slave Route Project, which was retracing the experience of slavery from the point of view of the slaves, but throughout the region. And, well, it couldn't get past Rex. He couldn't line up support from the various ministries and divisions of culture throughout the region, even using his UE connections, etc. They just
Well,
was.
listen, I think if Rex with his influence couldn't pull that off, I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Because Rex had influence. No question about it.
Oh, yes.
No question about that.
And, it incorporated dance and music and storytelling and dress coding and the economic side, because Rex was into all of that.
Oh yes.
And I think that's one of the things that saddened him, that he didn't get a chance to sort of see this off and running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we sit here today.
But the saddest part of all of this to me is that the slavery experience continues. The plantation continues. The plantation continues to operate.
And by whom?
And by our own people.
Because you mentioned
new plantation owners.
You mentioned, Rodney, that Europe underdeveloped Africa.
Yes.
If he was still alive, what would he be writing today?
He would probably be writing about that. How Caribbean people underdeveloped the Caribbean.
Right.
So, yeah. That's what
you see, we can't blame.
They look like us. They look like you, Jerry. They look like, all of us.
Now, the other thing you mentioned earlier that I should commented on is what happened in that transition period. I think the one thing we never took time out to learn was the management. And I think Grenada's experience, for example, with associations and stuff like that, has left that indelible mark in my mind. Mm-hmm. That we were willing to run the people without learning how the systems worked. Because Grenada had the best, well, from what I've read anyway, some of the best cooperatives, association cooperatives. Yes, yeah. Grenada has had a rich history in cooperatives, but we were so willing, because then some of our people had gone and become lawyers, and they saw only the legal side of it. Let's get these guys out, and that's why our politics is still entrenched in the people who study law. But we never learned. We never got away. A whiff of that management business.
Jerry, I remember on one of your early morning programs, you brought up Black Power movement. And I said that the Black Power movement was probably one of the worst things that ever happened to us in the region, because it became a movement of Black people fighting to take control of state resources instead of fighting to develop the countries that they live in.
Yeah, it's a movement that got misdirected.
Misdirected.
In many cases. Misdirected.
Yeah. And because when you look at what was done, how it was done, in Grenada, you came out of a plantation era where you had Sir Eric McElderry, who fought for better conditions and better pay and betterment, for if there is such a word, for people on the plantation. He rose up through that movement, became Premier of Grenada, became Prime Minister of Grenada, and then parallel to that, you had another movement which wanted to get rid of the Gary movement, because they claimed that the Gary movement wasn't for Black people and wasn't for the working class. And at the time, it made sense to people. But looking back on it historically, how it have made sense? And this is the same man who just fought to bring the workers to a point. Maybe it was just for somebody to take the baton and move it on to another level.
It's transition again.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Precisely so.
We're not good at that.
No.
No, but I said, no, hold on, but that's why I make the point. What happened in terms of the transition then, some of our then brighter minds went off to the same colonial countries, got educated, and you would have thought that they would have understood that, but no. If you look for the gap, well, I look for the gap, and this is why I see the gap in the whole transition business, because they came back and they recognized, wow, I mean, this felt good. You know, the master thing felt good. And so they convinced the masses that we are here for you. Look where we are today. Yes. Look where we are today.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. You know, we need to learn from both our mistakes and our successes.
The successes, obviously.
Unfortunately, unlike more modern and more mature cultures, whenever you make a mistake, there are some people who in life never let you forget it.
Yeah. Made that point this morning.
There's no opportunity for a transition to collaboration. And that's why you go to your point. The political party structure, mechanism, and behavior is the death knell of transition and sustainable development. Exactly. Because it splits the society minimally into two pieces. And at any point in time, the country does not have access to the ideas and energy and technology of half its population because
it makes no sense. And makes no sense.
So it you know, there's a level of maturity of character that continues to elude us, notwithstanding the fact that we are not a foolish or stupid people. But for some reason, you know, the power and the bon temps, the good time and the status thing that appeals to the, if you will, most you know, common and ordinary among us appeals to the most sophisticated among us in the same way. and so the grabbing, and the accumulating, and the denial of opportunity. And you look at Bev, I remember Bev brother had mess up my brother. So Bev for that too. Yeah. And so it's intergenerational rivalry and cannibalism.
Yes.
But that is exactly what it is. Let me give you an example of how we seek to inculcate this thing, you know, because sometimes it's too obvious. There's a situation in St. Vincent where the CDB had to redact the word.
Redacted the word. You just white out.
Yeah, white out. A contract.
They got rid of that. It's no longer white out.
A contract that was given to a construction company because another construction company who had bid for the job realized that the contract was given to this company and they didn't have the experience, so he contested it, and when they investigated, he was right. So they wrote to the government and said, we are going to rescind that contract, and the monies that we paid you, we want it repaid with interest. You heard me what I said, right? Yesterday, one of the people who's supposed to be one of the leaders, opinion leaders, well placed, puts it out there as one Vincentian company trying to take food out of another Vincentian company. Nothing to do with what the facts are. But you see, that will sell better. That will cloud them because that same cannibalism is what is going to happen. In fact, but hold on. In fact, last week, Friday night, one talk show host read out every contract and how much the one who contested it, has gotten. The Prime Minister went on Sunday and did exactly the same thing. What are you trying to do?
Well,
You see, and that is where we fall apart because we like that kind of the divisiveness, that kind of nastiness has become endemic among us. And it's because of this that we are not seeing our way forward. It is we just have not emancipated ourselves from that kind. It's the yard boy house slave.
But Jerry, you see why George Orwell's Animal Farm is very super relevant to
You know where that man came from?
the way we run things.
You know where that man came from? Yeah, do you?
No, do you tell me?
He's a Vincentian. You see
Yeah,
it,
we
job.
did. Well,
So really and true, he really didn't know. And that book is so old.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I've read it several times and I never bothered to
Most
find
people didn't realize that, yeah.
Because to me, it doesn't really matter who. If it makes sense.
I agree, but I'm just trying to link it back.
The who is a.
Oh no, the story is too relevant, man. That story is a little bit too relevant.
You see that point about who? People will read or not read something depending on who writes.
And who, exactly.
Depending on who says it. They will
Truth is based on who, not what. If Ati says so, no matter how right it is, it's wrong.
Yeah. So, George, do we have people participating via Facebook? We could look at someone.
Let me tell you, Beverly, there are tons of them. A lot of comments. The thing is, a lot of them are now dated, because you guys have been speaking. These comments have been coming in.
No, but still, let us know what they were. I still think it's important.
All right. Let me start here. For example, Wayne Francis says, determine who gets it. Thanks. I don't know what you guys make of that. Margaret Francis, okay.
She's alive.
Yeah, Margaret's alive. Wayne Francis says, Mr. Grant, by the way, I love your program. Wayne, it's not mine. This one's Bev's. But do we really believe as black people that we aren't? I'm trying to figure out what he's saying.
That we are what?
That we are what?
That we aren't entitled to reparation. And if so, how do you, Wayne, try and think before you take to the keyboard. Anyhow, Albert says, this is why Caribbean governments should adopt the Rastafari movement as a legitimate expression of Caribbean identity and religio-philosophical thought as opposed to Christianity, which enslaved us. Some of it, I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, a little bit incoherent. Margaret says, have you asked the same question of all the other groups who demand and got compensation for atrocities committed against them? Albert Williams says, a statue and Bob Marley Day should be erected and his international legacy celebrated all over the Caribbean. Margaret says, I can't speak for the Caribbean, but I do know that in the USA, various models for addressing the reparations issue have been put forward. At Georgetown University, for example, students agreed to tax themselves so that descendants of the slaves that the university sold to bail itself out of financial woes can attend the university free. They literally went in search of those descendants, and one of them is currently attending Georgetown. This is not related. Margaret says, Bev, I don't know about the Caribbean, but there are slave narratives in the United States. In fact, 12 Years of Slave was based on one of those narratives. I'm trying, guys, I'm trying.
But so many of these comments are prefaced by the thing, don't know about the Caribbean, don't know the Caribbean. that's of interest to me because, over the last 50, 60 years, the people who have defined and described and developed our development strategies and our financing strategies and so on don't know about the Caribbean.
Absolutely.
And our Caribbean leadership has not been forthright enough to say to them, I'm sorry, but you say you don't know the Caribbean. So what makes you believe that you can come here with a development plan locked up in your briefcase or your computer and just give it to me and say, if I want the money, I must accept your plan? Whether you're Mr. IMF or Miss World Bank or whoever it is you are. And that's another part of the Caribbean reality. And the question that Bev keeps asking about the transition, you would have thought that 40, 50 years is enough to organize a transition. How many years of independence have we had generally on average, from the 70s forward, from the 60s now, and what have we done to prove to ourselves, nobody else, that we know how to deal with this thing, even something as seminal as Caribbean identity. Look at what we are doing with our Caribbean identity today. Something that the slaves would never have agreed to. That's why they revolted. Because they wanted to claim and hold on to their identity. But today, we have official government state programs for selling our Caribbean identity.
Yes.
For $100,000 US. So that's the Caribbean you have to know if you wish to partner with the Caribbean in transitioning to a developed situation. A region of African people that was enslaved, brought here, transplanted, that is today, as part of their official development strategy, selling their passports, selling their identity to whoever will pay. Do you understand that that is the same identity we struggled for, we fought for, we are still fighting for? And while we are still fighting for it, our official state ministries are selling it? I mean, come on. Maybe we should say the Caribbean, the world carnival.
Ati, it's the same exact story with our roots.
It's the same thing.
Our grandparents and foreparents fought until 1951 to get the right to vote. And some of them lost their lives, they get vote. Today we're giving it away for some galvanized, for $50, for some cement, for some sugar. Like if it has no value.
So when people start their contribution by saying, I don't really know the Caribbean, but my next word to them is, but stop talking.
Artie, somebody here says, Artie, the sight of money can turn heads. Pardon me?
I missed that.
I did not hear what you said, George.
Somebody by the name of John Kennison says, Artie, the sight of money can turn heads.
Yeah, true.
And Jeffrey Providence says, we have a slave master in St. Vincent in the name of Ralph.
Jeffrey Providence?
Yes.
That boy is trouble itself.
Where's Jeffrey, Jerry?
Yeah?
Where is Jeffrey?
Jeffrey based in New York.
Oh, he's in New York.
We don't want any memes, please.
Okay. All right, Beverly, break time?
Yes, let's take the break and come back.
GRENLEC Community Partnership Initiative.
This is not the first time that GRENLEC, through the GCPI, has responded positively to TAMCC, and we are always appreciative for the support. TAMCC, like the GCPI, is geared to service the community. As a college, we cannot accomplish our mission of fostering Grenada's development through education without meaningful partnerships from other community members. GRENLEC has been a leader in this regard.
GRENADABROADCAST, energizing our community.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
I don't want that.
But you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who's supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
Studying too hard about back to school expenses? Co-op Bank is making back to school as easy as 1, 2, 3. Enjoy competitive interest rates, affordable monthly payments, speedy decisions on applications. Come in and apply today.
You folks at home and on the panel don't ever get to see what goes on during the breaks. But I can assure you that these guys have some fascinating conversations. One of these days, take some time and ask them what they talk about during the break. Beverly?
Yes, George.
Go ahead.
We're back.
Oh, yes, you're back. You see, guys, you see what I'm talking about, guys? We are back, and they didn't even have a clue.
It's a new mellow, George.
George, sneak us back on air and give us a thing.
If you guys would pay attention.
No, all the viewers and the listeners just do bad behavior.
Yes, that's it. That's MEK WE CHAT. In other words, even when you go off here, you don't stop chat.
Yes.
What to chat about?
But while we were off air, I said I do believe this is one of our most stimulating discussions ever. Because it is the root of why we are where we are as a Caribbean people and not really moving in the direction that we need to go. Because when you look at our islands, Jamaica up north, right along the east, down to Trinidad, down to Guyana, we are sorely and bitterly divided along political, and in the case of Trinidad and Guyana, along racial lines.
Yeah.
And those in positions of authority and positions of leadership are the ones who encourage the division, because it keeps them living a lifestyle that they can't afford on their own. They have to ride on the backs of people to maintain those lifestyles. Look at what happened in Grenada. We have a young man running up a $20,000 cell phone bill.
Could never do that on your own.
He could not do that on his own. He would never be earning enough money to pay a $23,000 a month cell phone bill. So, because of that now, they keep the masses in a certain place so that they can continue to enjoy the lifestyles that they enjoy. And as Patchy said in his Calypso, which is what I posted on my Facebook page for my Emancipation song, Yard Boy.
Oh, really?
Them scrunting, massa living large, and yet still you don't even recognize how enslaved you are when you allow yourself, your vote, to go for a $50 for a t-shirt for someone who's flying around in a private jet at your expense, spending your money to live a lifestyle that you cannot live, but you are maintaining it. You're maintaining it, but you can't live it.
Right.
And that is the kind of systems we have in our countries. Instead of a system where everybody is not going to be quote unquote rich. Everybody does not aspire to certain things. But most people aspire to a standard of living where you can maintain your dignity, where you don't have to go out and beg. You can be comfortable, where your children can look at you with respect.
But you know, this evening I gave a young man a ride into town. I was on my way into town and picked him up, and he had a little black toolkit. And so he got in, we were driving. He said, "Mr. Martin, that's my livelihood." I said, "Really? What's in there?" He said, "My tools." I said, what do you do?" He said, "I'm a mechanic. And these are my tools. That's what allows me to earn a living." And he went on, and obviously he was knowledgeable about his craft. I said, "So you're not one of those who goes to one of these ministers and asks them for a handout, a cool out, a help out?" He said, "Me? No. I employ people. When I have a big job, I have to go and get helpers to lift engines and things like that and so on. But I work for myself. I work for my living." That was so refreshing.
I'm telling you.
That was so refreshing.
And you could hear the pride in his voice when he spoke.
Oh, yeah.
The man went on to tell me after every job, he wipes down every tool and cleans it and put it back in its proper position in his toolkit. I mean, that gave me hope, honestly. It's a little light, but boy, that was so refreshing.
George.
Aye.
I just see a comment pop up here. Someone named Albert Williams says the few points he has raised have not been taken up by the panel. So, George, is it possible that you could find any other point Mr. Albert Williams have made so that he doesn't think we are deliberately ignoring him? But when we get flooded with comments like we have...
Well, hold on, Bev. Hold on. Mr. Williams is posting some very lengthy URLs here, huh?
Oh,
I mean, please.
No, you can't deal with that.
No, exactly.
Okay. My apologies to the suspect in charge.
No, but it's just, we cleared it up right on here.
Exactly so.
Yeah.
Because we want him to know he's not being ignored, but within the confines of the program, it's what we can do with.
If he wants, he can call the program.
Yeah,
and interact with us. Yeah. He can call the program.
Right.
But you know, Bev, I did send you some very disturbing issues that have arisen in Dominique over the last 48 hours. I don't know if you wish to take this up, because it fits in with what we're talking about. It's
yes,
about,
it does.
It's about the reinstitution of the plantation, the political institution.
And that's exactly what is happening. And I think I can best explain it because when I listened to that clip today with a member of the House in Dominica, really outlining how much money would have come into that country within a few months, 5 months?
5 months. In 5 months.
Month period, how much money would have into the country through the selling of passports. But the money not accounted for, where is it?
True. That's the point. We're having our budget debate, our annual budget debate right now. And the estimates and statements of revenue were presented in the budget address and the accompanying documentation. And in his reply, the leader of the opposition, Lennox Linton, actually pointed this out. The revenue shown from the CBI program was $261 million. That's in the official submission by the Ministry of Finance. But over the 5-month period from August, September, October, November, December of 2018, 3,961 new Dominican citizens received passports at the average cost of 100,000 US. That results in revenue of over 1 billion EC dollars.
Because Ati, when I heard your budget was $1 billion, I started to raise a lot of questions. Well, go ahead.
Okay, so the CBI generated that in 5 months. If you prorate that over a period of 12 months, you begin to understand the figures that we're playing with here. But only $261 million of that is reported as revenue. So where is the $1 billion? Because it's 1,200 and something million.
That is
generated
crazy.
By the sale of passports in 5 months. But only $261 million revenue is reported. So there's $1 billion missing.
That is
not reported,
madness galore.
not accounted for. And, the House was in total silence while Mr. Linton was making his presentation. There was not a boo. Normally you have a lot of interruptions from the other side. There was not a boo. Nobody said anything, and the Minister of Finance walked out of the House while the presentation and the mathematics was being made. Recall, the reason the people of Haiti have taken to the streets is because of another $1 billion US this time of Petro-Carib money that disappeared.
Completely.
In Dominica, $1 billion EC has disappeared. Not accounted for. Tonight, the main spinner of government matters, Jerry's friend, Tony Astafan, attempted to spin.
Leave my friend alone.
But as he spoke, he put his both feet in his mouth. He said, well, only a certain amount of the revenue goes into the treasury and the rest goes into special accounts for, building hotels and so. But that,
really?
That no disclosure of that, no disclosure of where the special accounts are, no disclosure of how much into which special account, no disclosure as to what went to which hotels, etc., etc. So are we building billion-dollar hotels in Dominica?
But worse than that, Ati, why should the government take taxpayers' money and give it to investors, and the property at the end of the day is in their name? That don't make no sense to me.
But that's what we're talking about here. We're talking emancipation, right?
To me.
So we're not only selling our Caribbean identity, but we're selling it to non-residents, to non-citizens, to non-Africans.
I don't understand that.
And we're giving it away. And we're not accounting.
And giving the same money back to them because they are supposed to be economic citizens.
Right.
They're supposed to invest in the country to get rights, to get a passport.
They're supposed to invest.
Yeah.
They are supposed to
get the passport.
But that is not what we are doing.
So, to be honest, I find it incredulous.
What has been happening is that the money is collected, put in a pool, and given back to these same people who are supposed to be investing.
It's reparations in reverse. we are paying reparations to those people. That's what we're doing, and that's why all those reparations advocates, while you are shouting for reparations to us, you don't see that we are paying reparations to those to the same people. You don't see that? What's wrong with us? Why don't we understand? And in a little island with less than 70,000 people.
That's a lot of money. That's crazy amount of money.
$1 billion?
That's a crazy amount of money. I now believe the story of $72 million to fight an election. I now believe it.
But $70 million is a joke.
That's what I tell you. That's a drop in the bucket. That's not money.
That is a penny.
But it's sad. No. It is seriously, right? I mean, we might say all kinds of stuff. But something, anytime a government, I believe, collects money, the money should go to the consolidated fund. Let the money be taken out of the consolidated fund and do whatever you want so that there'll be some tracking. But that system where Dominica has, where the agents go out and whatever, once they could sell the passport or whatever, as long as they put back in $150,000 in there, it's fine. I mean,
And remember, Jerry, that the foreign banks, Royal, First Caribbean, Scotia, will not accept any money from the Citizen Bank Investment Program in Dominica.
Money. Nope.
It can only go into one bank, which is the National Bank.
That makes that worrisome,
But it's not going there, Jerry, because the National Bank just had the annual general meeting and their accounts do not reveal anything like that. So
they're making a laugh, I understand.
So where is the money? How can you hide $1 billion EC dollars in full view of the population?
I like that, in full view.
Wow.
No, this is serious. I might be sounding jocular about it, but I think it's crazy. And these are the things I believe that we should get back to and make people give account for.
But of
This
course.
is crazy.
Where's the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in all of this? Where is,
No, in a sense, it probably haven't gotten to them because the money's never come into our region.
No, listen. The late former governor of the ECCB, remember when FIFA by collapse, he said, that don't have nothing to do with them, basically. Despite the fact that these two organizations were controlling so much money, they were banking it. Was not the ECCB business. They said, that's insurance.
Yep.
We don't have nothing to do with that.
And greed.
That sugar attracts a lot of people.
I thought you were going to say ants. That sugar attracts a lot of ants. I thought you were going to say that.
A lot of, people behaving like us. And so you're seeing increasingly a lot of retirees, retired professionals, retired this, retired that, kind of sidling over because if it's $1 billion, crumbs from that
that would be crazy.
Would be substantial. So all they're looking for is crumbs.
But you know what has happened in this post-colonial Caribbean? Generally, people are very trusting. Population, very trusting. And when you're in an era where someone stick their hand up in the air and they see which way the wind is blowing, jump up and say, okay, I'll take you in that direction.
That's right.
The people trust them to do what they say they are going to do. It reminds me of a cartoon I used to watch, of course, I still watch cartoons, but that's one when I was small. They had Cowboy X, who was riding around the town painting X's all over the place. So the town called a meeting and say, look, we have to get rid of Cowboy X. He's destroying the town with his X's. So they call a meeting and they tell Cowboy X, stop painting X's all over our town. And the cowboy X said, of course I'll stop. From now on, I'm going to paint O. I'll no longer be cowboy X. Now I'm cowboy O.
Oh. All the thing they're coming is
So that is what happened to us as a people. We are so trusting. That's when these people get up and say, that's the direction you want to go, we're going to lead you there. But they come out and they do the complete opposite. But they tell us they're going to lead us in the right way. We sit down and expect that at some point they're really going to do the right thing.
So you say that, you too trust them? Because with that kind of money, no bother. Nobody not trust them, so period.
But if we continue to operate like ignorant sheep, what else can I say except that we are very trusting?
No, I hear you.
You see, and I say, okay, he thief $23,000 paying phone bill today, but we trust him that he won't do it again. So you leave him there. You do not put any measures in place. You don't tighten up the system. You don't do nothing. You just trust him that he won't do it again. Yeah? That is how we behave, you know.
But look at the ludicrosity of this whole thing. Yeah, this conversation demands new vocabulary.
Ludicrosity, I agree.
We're allowing these guys to get away with millions and now billions. But the little person who goes into the store hungry, they need a little can of milk to go home and try to put some milk in their baby's belly. And they thief up a can of milk. When they are captured by the security guard in the supermarket, you know they'll go to jail.
Not just like they splash them all across the newspaper.
Yeah. Listen, they are tarred and feathered. And I spoke to this publicly recently, you know. I remember in Grenada a few weeks ago when one of the ministers announced this school book program or the school back to school assistance program where you get a voucher for either $50, $100, or $150. Sat down there and talk about all the mechanisms that were in place so that people couldn't abuse the $50 and the $100 and the $150. And at the same time, you have them abusing the system, ripping off taxpayers of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions. And in Dominica case and maybe in Grenada and St. Vincent case, to billions.
Billions, oh yeah, it is.
You're not putting mechanisms in place to prevent those excesses, but you're very stern about putting mechanisms in place to prevent people off the $50 voucher, the $100 voucher, and the $150 voucher. Because they must stay poor. So that next year
exactly
$50.
Yeah.
You see, but you can abuse the system and continue to swell up and become richer and richer every year. And the one who can't abuse the $50 voucher will come back and support you because they trust you that next year you're going to do the right thing. Yeah?
But there's a human side to this tragedy. And it's been forcefully driven home to me quite personally. People who I grew up with as childhood friends, neighborhood friends, or school friends, or later professional friends, maybe. I can't speak with them anymore.
I know what you mean.
I can't socialize with them anymore. We have nothing in common because the thing that I consider to be the foundation of a human being, which is their value system, the ethics, what they consider to be, that red line in the sand beyond which they won't go. Those folks have all given that away. And they have all found a way to justify and rationalize. They're now on the begging line. They are now receiving gifts from the politicians. Some of them who, even, had their properties fully insured and got their insurance payments are still getting building material or money to repair a house that is already repaired.
Yeah.
So, so at a very seminal level of friendships and human relations in the Caribbean, where you can lime with everybody, and you don't have to like everybody to lime with them, but you're comfortable enough. That is eroded, and increasingly you kind of having like some unofficial lines of apartheid, not not racial, but certainly value-based apartheid, and townships or places where you no longer go because the people there are just they are coarse and they grate against your very humanity.
You're not drinking no steel bottom there, not you.
No. No matter what.
Oh gosh.
Matter.
Yeah.
But
and then because you choose to
it's painful.
certain values. Because you choose to maintain certain values.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're the odd one out,
Oh yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, if you're the kind of person who revels in being invited to the parties and the this and that, you live a painful life.
Mm-hmm.
But if, like me, the person whose company you enjoy most is yours.
That's fine. Exactly. Be good.
Doesn't
really
make
good.
a difference.
Yeah,
but there are not a lot of people that way. We're not socialized that way. We're socialized to meet and
Join
greet.
the line.
Exactly.
To be cold and callous and gimme. Everything is mine, and we don't matter. We don't care if we have to take the eyes from a blind man. While we want it.
But it's dismantling what we know as the West Indian, the Caribbean society, and the Caribbean personality.
Yeah.
Dismantling it. So where does that leave us? Who are we? Who do we become? Who have we become?
Well, we talked about it a while ago, we have sold our identities. So now we are a people who are no longer a people. You can no longer come to the Caribbean and expect certain things.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore.
It's getting a cold place.
But you see, we have been pitted against each other.
Yeah.
So the politician gives certain people, especially in certain positions, so it becomes very visible, which makes the others hanker after jealousy. So when they see that happen, they muscling in for theirs too. And the politicians, they playing a very clever game.
Yes.
Right? Holds that next one.
No,
so the others.
This Bob Marley song, Ambush in the Night.
Yeah.
Through political strategy, they keep us hungry. And when you want to get some food, your brother becomes your enemy.
Exactly, that's it, precisely. But there's another side. There's another side to that coin, that I saw it played out. I was in Trinidad last week. The criminals are doing the same thing, holding communities in exactly the same way, especially when politicians do not fulfill the role of government in communities. And the criminals recognize it, and they have all this fresh money. They go in and they become the benefactors.
Yeah, they are the sugar daddies.
They're the sugar daddies.
Yeah.
So one way or the others, we are given over to slavery.
Yeah.
That started in Jamaica with the one done there.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And the original one done, he passed away the other day, and people talking stupid about become a hero.
But is there anything we can do about this, folks? I know we've talked about it before. Solutions and responses. What do we do, Bev? How do we do what we need to do to? Is there a hope for repairing this damaged product that is Caribbean society? Is there hope? And where is it?
We have a lot of damage. We do. You see, our generation, sadly, next generation, because young people now in their 20s and 30s, you just want to look at a carnival parade to see that they have a sense of pride. You just need to look at the way they dress, the way they go down the street, and they are made to think that it's okay because their parents brought them up that way.
That's right.
And they, in turn, now are bringing their children up that way. Children are now selfish. They don't care about each. They don't care about other children. It's not the kind of friendship we had when we were children. And I think about it, Ati, and I say, how really do we work solving the problem and getting through to the generations to come that what is happening now is destroying you? When you look back in history, when our foreparents fought for freedom, it was preparing us to take over our own destiny and to be free people. So they were planning forward. We are planning forward, consciously or subconsciously. But what we are planning is not for the development of the generations to come. We are wiping out the generations that are not even yet born.
No.
We have taught them to be thieves, to be dishonest, to be selfish, and to lack morals and ethics. That is what we're teaching.
It's frightening because, you know,
It's scary.
It's almost as if, I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. I mean, it's not what I believe, but it's what it seems. You hinted at it. Are we engaged in self-genocide? Are we engaged in kind of wiping?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Is that the solution that has been presented to us? I mean, eating bad food, using dangerous toxic chemicals in the home, on the farms, in the factories that are getting us as males sterile, and men and women are getting all forms of cancer now because of exposure to carcinogenic substances, fully proven by science, by medical science, and so on. I mean, is that what is happening? Is that kind of doomsday scenario our now becoming our reality?
It is, Afi. And the few of us parents who raised our children well, you're going to find that those children are not going to stay in the Caribbean. They're going to leave and go to other countries where they can live the kind of life that they believe they should live. They're not going to stay in the lawlessness.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to stay in countries where the political divide is such that you must belong to some political, no, let me say that over. You must belong to the political organization that controls the country if you want to get ahead. They're not going to stay.
Beverly.
They're going to leave.
Beverly.
Hold on, Bev. George?
Beverly, you asked me a little while ago to keep up on the comments on Facebook. Here are some comments that were made a little while ago, and so these may be a little bit dated. Wayne Francis says, are we sure about these figures? $1 billion is a lot of money for Grenada.
That's right.
John says,
are we sure? The figures are contained in the Gazette and in the financial statements that were presented to the House of Assembly yesterday.
John says, and these, hold on a sec.
You can do the arithmetic.
And these crooks are such good church-going people. Margaret says, quite right, Ati. They jail a man in Grenada for thieving a coconut.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay. She also goes on to say, more like whitewashed tombstones that full of dead men's bones.
Bones.
John says that's because it was a minister's coconut. Renewed purpose says good people like you will always be seen as a threat or unpopular. Albert Williams says, I love it when one references Bob Marley. And renewed purpose here says, usual suspects, I wish to hear what your views are on the aura or vibes you are getting from our Grenadian leader. Does he come across as nearing senility, or is it a blatant disregard of rule of law and its consequences? What is he trying to achieve by behaving so lawlessly? Margaret Francis says, Artie, there is hope. It goes back to your earlier point of us going back to our roots. The peasant farming economy of which you spoke, and similar structures that were native to us as a people. In other words, we have to go back to come forward. How we do that is the devil in the detail. There you go, folks. So, now is somebody going to answer renewed purpose? What is he trying to achieve by behaving so lawlessly?
Well, I don't know what he's trying to achieve, but I can tell you what he's going to achieve. It's a nation of lawless people. Because if the Prime Minister can sit here and say, oh, the Commissioner of Police can't tell me what to do, then what will stop everybody else from saying the same thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Not just saying the same thing, but saying the same thing about somebody to whom they should give some kind of deference.
Exactly so. So the child will go into school and say, oh, my teacher can't tell me what to do. The corporal will look upon his superior in the police force, which an ASP, and say, oh, this ASP can't tell me what to do. And all of a sudden, nobody can tell nobody what to do. And then
But that's our society.
It's just the way the society behaves.
That's our society.
You see? Oh, the commissioner can't tell me what to do. Oh, nobody can tell nobody what to do. So that is my answer in new purpose. I don't know what he hopes to achieve, but I can tell you what he's going to achieve. A lawless nation where everybody thinks that nobody in authority can tell them what to do. So everybody gonna do what they like.
Yep. And there's another case in that I could understand, because when I asked about some stuff in his poster, like the Prime Minister says that is off mark limits. I mean, I never know that has been the case in
when
any
I asked about
position.
what, Jerry?
Some personal thing the Prime Minister
yes.
I mean, that's I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a special place.
There's nothing personal when you're a public figure.
But exactly.
Exactly so. Precisely. What you eat for breakfast is not your own business. It's everybody's business.
But not only that, especially when the taxpayer paying for it.
But you are supported by the taxpayer. You're answerable to them.
Absolutely.
But I just dropped that in there to show that it's not a mindset along a particular point. It's a real holistic thinking that I am in charge and I can do what I like.
You can do what I like. And
you understand?
Well,
folks, Arthur Langine says
hold a second, Aki.
Arthur Langine says the power is going up to his head.
Okay.
And Rajendra Maharaj says, how come the headquarters for CARICOM, TT, not in with them?
How come what?
The headquarters for CARICOM, TT. not in with them. I don't understand that one.
Boy, I just wish people would just think before you post. We're so anxious to get their comments out there. That's why I even go ahead and read this stuff, because we really, really want their voices to be heard. But some of the stuff I see posted, boy, phew, wow. He'll be out of the country when total lawlessness happens, so says John Kennison. It's referring to the Prime Minister. And Bev suggesting that we're headed towards a country of lawlessness.
You see, this lawless thing, I don't think it's related to one country alone. It's something that we have been selling as a region. And nobody wants to speak to it because everybody wants to be liked. But this business of doing what everybody does is right. There is no longer a societal norm. There are no values to which a society must stand. Everybody is right. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to throw in something here, as I see we run out of time. Today, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the first female was sworn in as Governor General. There's a side who is absolutely mad at the Prime Minister for playing God Save the Queen on a day like today. What say you guys?
Playing God Save the Queen?
Well, yeah, if you swear in the public, if you swear in a Governor General, you have to play the
Yeah.
Right. But there are people who are upset that the Prime Minister chose to play that. It's almost as if it's anathema. I mean, how do you play God Save the Queen on Emancipation Day?
So God not supposed to save the Queen on Emancipation
You let
Day?
me alone.
I know one person in St. Vincent who understands the full significance of that, and that's Ralph Gonsalves.
Thank you. I put exactly that on my thing. I said this is no accident.
You
This is
understand?
no accident.
No, this is deliberate. This is a calculated.
I said exactly
normally.
that. I said this is no accident. No accident.
That's how his brain works.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not, So while people getting all bent out of shape, he's having a bottom.
Oh,
yeah. It's not a literal one, but essentially it has the same effect.
Yes,
And it's a classic move of creating discord and chaos, and then coming in as a great peacemaker. Say, no, not cool, man. We fix that.
We fix that.
Yeah, we fix that.
I can fix that. That's no problem. No big deal.
Yeah, I can fix everything. Oh gosh, what this?
We are not in a nice position historically on that spectrum. The world is really not either, because you see what just happened in Puerto Rico and is unfolding in Brazil and happening in Sudan, in Hong Kong. And I mean, people have not lost sight of the fact that they have rights.
Mm-hmm.
They are confronting the reality that the institutions that were given and that were built to so-called protect those rights and to guarantee those rights are not working. So they are now going behind, they're looking behind those institutions, and who are the puppeteers that are actually mismanaging and entangling those institutions, and they're finding human beings like themselves, people. And so they're going after those.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just a natural progression. Of people insisting on their right to have a say in their lives. And it will happen in the Caribbean, except it may, it depends on when they plan it for. The last poets used to have a song, when the revolution comes, will you be doing whatever. Well, if Carnival comes when the revolution comes, I'm sorry.
Forget that.
I'll give you one guess as to who will lose out. The revolution will lose.
I'm telling you.
The revolution will lose. Absolutely.
So
especially if the shop and soca on that night.
All they have to do is plan the revolution around Carnival time.
And that is it done. Oh
I want,
my
I want, I
goodness.
want to read a little bit more of what this guy says, right? He says, our duty is to give to our government and nation,
Yeah.
not take. And in return, make sure that the government does its duty, not to us, but to all the society. If we enforce our policy of making sure the government does its duty, then we would not be bribing the customs, the police, the judiciary, the licensing officer, or the Red House officer. If we had good systems, procurement, we would not be bribing the government for contracts. If we ensure that the government does its duty in health, in traffic, in crime, we would not be so unhappy. But we are, because we have made ourselves slaves. This is what this man is saying.
So here's the answer to the question, Bev. We make ourselves slaves.
Make ourselves slaves. Yeah.
We make
That's the
ourselves.
answer to the question.
And then once
That
we
was
make
my
ourselves-
answer.
Right. And then once you have made ourselves slaves, the masters will pay.
It's a vacuum. It's made a vacuum.
Exactly. The masters will pay.
So,
A comment made by you guys a little while ago regarding the Constitution has elicited this response from Albert Williams. Albert says, well, it depends on what type of Constitution they subscribe to. If she represents the Queen, then so be it. As in Dominica, our president represents us. Artie?
That's correct, yeah. The Republic.
No, we don't. We have a Republican constitution.
Yeah.
The Queen is. We no longer play God Save the Queen.
Okay. Right. Renewed Purpose says Grenada is on the verge of another revolution. And I say this based on what I have heard people expressing when they speak about the state of leadership and the economic situation here. You know, guys, I'm hearing the same thing, eh? And it scares the stuffing out of me. You know? I wasn't here for the revolution 79, 83, but I've heard enough to tell you that it's something I wouldn't want to experience. Yeah.
It will be different.
Pardon me?
It will be different.
Yeah, it won't be the same kind.
This one will be very different.
Artie, dare I ask you how?
You have a lot more guns in the society now than you did then. In the population. And you have a lot more.
You mean you didn't have to break the armory to get them, right?
No. They're walking. They're walking around. They're driving around. They're standing around.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it will not be one side which is armed.
No.
Nope.
It'll be a war.
Absolutely not. It'll be
It
a war.
will be a war.
Wow.
And there'll be a lot of collateral damage, unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
And that is the case in all our countries.
Sad.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you
Well,
got 2 minutes.
2 minutes to go. And I think we should just be wrapping things up. If everybody has any quick something they'd like to add at this point.
My last word would be people, think for yourself, and at the same time, think of others. That's what Dwight Astafan says the mantra for his group is. But most important, think for yourself. Think of your life, what it is today, and think of where it's going to be if you continue on the path you're on. And really and truly think of what you want to leave behind when you're gone. Because regardless of what you think, you won't be here forever. None of us will be.
Guys, hold on.
Judge?
Hold on. Quick comment here from Margaret. Margaret just got in. She says, highly unlikely. Who's going to lead it? She's talking about the revolution. Artie?
And Margaret, we're waiting on her.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you.
I didn't hear the question, George.
No, she asking who's going to lead the revolution.
Oh, no, it won't be led by one person this time. It'll be led by a fairly large group.
You and Margaret and Jerry and...
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
Albert Williams says, interesting exchange of views tonight. Good night. God bless.
Okay.
Thank you. And that's a fitting place to end. Thanks a lot, folks. Next week, God willing, another edition of MEK WE Chat on Thursday evening. So long.
Guys.